Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today for Circulating Material in Evergreen. Today, the resources are very similar to the patron management webinar because, of course, it's all part of circulation. So we have the consortium's shared circulation policy. Should be supplemental to your local circulation policy. So if you haven't looked at this in a while, I recommend you do so. This actually went through a major overhaul last year to allow more libraries a little more autonomy when it comes to selecting how you identify your patrons versus by identity and a residency and things like that. Circulation procedures guide, consortium specific procedures when it comes to certain different areas of the web client, what these different areas mean, like different patron profile types. Circulation training manual, this is actually kind of outdated now. I want to point you towards the circulation knowledge base. This has more up-to-date information regarding how to use the circulation functions within the Evergreen ILS. So it's not an exhaustive list, but if you don't see something that should be there, please let me know, and I will try and get it up there as soon as I am able. Because we are dealing with circulation, even though we're not directly working with patron accounts per se, I still have the link to the patron profile matrix because that will still determines like the maximum items out. If we were dealing with limited access, remember, like they would be limited to being able to check out rated R or M audiovisual materials, things like that. Always want to point out the training server, which is a sandbox server that allows you to practice what you have learned, especially if you are newer to Evergreen. Um, it's a safe space. You can't break anything. It resets every Sunday. So it is a great place to practice checking out materials, marking things as damaged, billing, and things like that. And then second, as always, I want to point out our evergreenindiana.org website, your one-stop shop for all things Evergreen, Indiana. This is where you can access all of those circulation policies and procedures, information about the patron record confidentiality policy, which is important to know as front-facing library staff on what you can and can't do with patron record information. It has access to the circulation procedures. You can access that knowledge base, which includes all of that circulation information along with other areas like getting started, cataloging, and local admin. Again, it's not exhaustive. So this is really your a great place to start if you are looking for information. So today, our agenda, first we are going to look at just the Circs and Evergreens, so the setup and rules. Then we are going to move to checking out. There are actually three ways to circulate items in Evergreen. Next, we are going to look at circulation maintenance. So how do we renew material on a patron's account? And there are other actions that we can take that are focused on circulation. Then we're going to look at how we check in material. What procedures are there that we might need to follow and how to do those. And then I wanted to go over some circulation alerts that might appear during circulation, might cause a little panic if you've never seen it before. First, let's look at circulation setup and rules. Even though we're talking about circulation, we are going to get into cataloging a little bit because they go hand in hand with how items circulate at your library. I think it's important to understand what and how items circulate in Evergreen. So, a quick breakdown of your library's cataloging process, probably. Your cataloger, once they have that new item, they are going to search for a matching bib record in the staff catalog. They are going to add their holding, so they need to add a call number and scan a new barcode, put it in a shelving location. They are going to assign a circulation modifier and item attributes based on your library's and Evergreen Indiana's shared circulation policy. And then the item is processed and then released to circulate to your patrons. The circulation modifier is taken from the circulation matrix This is the circulation matrix. This provides the list of circulation modifiers that are available to libraries to choose from for your items. We have modifiers for audiobooks, DVDs, music, equipment, transiting DVDs, transiting music. And remember, these are what define how or if an item circulates. Again, so circulation modifiers define how an item circulates. They define how many of this item, this circulation modifier or these items can a patron check out? How long can they check them out for? So are they going to allow them to check it out for 7, 14, 21 days? Can they renew items with this circulation modifier? How much do are fines if your library charges overdue fines? So how much do they accrue each day that item is overdue? Are they holdable? Can a patron at your library or other libraries request it? And then finally, are they allowed to transit outside of your library system? So when we attach a circulation modifier to an item, we are saying we want this item to circulate for this long, be allowed to renew this many times, be holdable and or transitable, cost this much each day it is overdue, etc. Let's take a look at this item's attributes again without the arrows. So this item has a circulation modifier for a book. If you look back at the circulation matrix, you can see that the normal loan duration for a book is 21 days. So this item should have a due date 3 weeks from the date of checkout. If your library collects overdue fines or fees, the normal fines indicate for books, I know it's hard without highlighting, normal fine level indicates that this item will cost 25 cents per day it is overdue. We can also see, based on those circulation modifier options and the attributes selected, that it is holdable, can circulate, and is opaque visible wherever. There it is, right there. Meaning it will show up if a patron uses the OPAC, whether it's the Classic Catalog or Aspen. So let's take a look at this next item. This is for a library's copy of the new Barbie movie on DVD. We see that the circulation modifier is transiting video disc, which according to the circulation matrix allows the DVD to transit in order to fill holds outside of the owning library system. It has a normal loan duration, which means it will circulate for 1 week, is holdable, can circulate, and if this library collects overdue fines or fees, will collect 25 cents per day the item is overdue. Another area that defines how items will circulate is that patron profile matrix. This describes how each patron profile type is defined. So this, along with other consortium level settings, define the borrowing privileges or limits. So while most of the patron profile types allow up to 100 items on each card, there is a limit to how many of certain types of items can be on a single card at a time. So for example, per card, patrons may check out up to 10 video discs, 10 videos, 5 equipment, 6 art, 2 e-readers, and 2 gaming software. So, you have that 100 item limit. You can have up to 10 video discs and then maybe 90 books. All right, so we've covered the setup of circulation. So now we are going to look at actually checking out material. First, let's break down the checkout tab. And this is an image of within a patron's account because that is where we check out material directly in the patron's account. This area right here, this is where we actually scan the barcode or select the non-catalog type, which we will talk about in a little bit. Over here in the area for 2, this is where we are going to select a specific due date for material being checked out. So this is something other than what is controlled by that circulation modifier. Like many areas in Evergreen, this area right here is where items being checked out will appear. This is the checkout grid column or grid area. And then here is where we will actually finish the checkout session and print or email the receipt for the patron. There are three types of checkouts available to us in Evergreen. Normal cataloged item checkout. This is where it's just a generic scan of the barcode of a cataloged item and you check it out to the patron. Pre-catalog checkout is sort of on-the-fly cataloging to check out an item not in the catalog. And non-catalog checkout is when you want to check out an item that isn't cataloged, but you want to keep circ stats on. A normal checkout, to check out an item found in the catalog, you will scan the item's barcode in that barcode field or enter it manually. Scans will usually submit automatically, while manual entry will require you to press enter. As you scan, all of the items will appear in that grid that we looked at before. Next, pre-catalog checkout, which again is what we need to do when an item that we scan is not found in the catalog. It could be because the item was deleted but not removed from the shelves. It could be as when it was cataloged, when they scanned the barcode, maybe it was misscanned, so it doesn't recognize what is actually on the barcode. If you want to get a little deeper, there are certain statuses where if an item is in that status for 5 or more years without being edited, it will automatically delete. This includes damaged, lost, missing, and items that were accidentally left in process, but shelved and then never checked out. But back to circulation. So there are two reasons the pre-catalog modal will appear after scanning the barcode. The item truly is not in the system or the barcode was misscanned. I always recommend, if this ever pops up, to cancel and then rescan the barcode. Then, if it still appears after that second scan, go ahead and follow the instructions on the screen to pre-catalog the item so it can be checked out to the waiting patron. There will be times when you circulate material that isn't cataloged in Evergreen. So material sent through Indiana Share, or again, if that item was found on your shelf, but it's no longer cataloged. We start on that checkout screen when we scan the item, and it brings up this modal. We find that the item really isn't there, so we are going to pre-catalog it. So to pre-catalog the item, we are going to enter the information in all uppercase letters. This is a visual indication to circulation staff that this is a pre-cat item or there's something just different about it. It's also recommended when you're dealing with Indiana Share items or non-Evergreen items to enter ILL in the front of the title. The ISBN isn't necessary, but if it's there, it may be useful when you are dealing with an item that needs to be re-added to your collection when it's returned. The circulation modifier you select will use its default settings for the circulation duration, fine levels, and available renewals. An ILL usually doesn't have renewals, just an extended due date, which we will use that specific due date function to set. So we can select the circ mod that matches our item and then activate the renewals using a specific date, or select the ILL modifier, which doesn't include any renewals. And I'll show you what that might look like. So when we click pre-cat checkout, it's going to appear in that grid like the others. It's not cataloged, so it doesn't actually have holdings. You will have the barcode or just the number that you scanned, the due date, and the title or whatever other columns you have viewable or visible in the checkout area. So before we go over the non-cataloged checkouts, we need to look at that ability to select a specific due date. What allows us to do is override the item's circulation attribute. So instead of circulating for the default 3 weeks, it could circulate by 4 or 5 or 6 or more. So when you scan the item, it will scan with that selected due date. You will want to be mindful of other libraries' material if you use this option. So we'll select the date that it has to be in the future. So when you click on the item, it will use that date. So first we will select the specific due date, and this happens before you scan the item. You need to select the due date before you scan anything. So we're going to click on this date options button, and then we're going to select specific due date or use specific due date until logout. The first option will be used for the current transaction, and it will use that due date for everything that is scanned after you choose that specific due date option. It will revert or it will disable it when you finish the checkout or when the account closes or you uncheck it. Use specific due date until logout. We'll use that selected due date for all subsequent checkouts until it is manually turned off or the staff person logs out of the web client. To select a date, you can either enter it manually or use this little calendar icon to select a date in the future. Now, after we have selected that due date, now we can start scanning the items. So in this example, we have it is a book. So instead of the 3 weeks that this would have been scanned at originally for the due date, it is set to this manual due date of 11/12. The last type of item we can check out or quote unquote check out, it's not real checkout to patrons, is the non-cataloged item. These allow you to track material in your library that are not traditionally cataloged. These could include your newspapers, miscellaneous serials, if you have a trades rack, headphones, puzzles, genealogy material, um, kind of anything that you want to track that is not cataloged into your collection. To check out a non-catalog material, this button right next to the barcode field is clickable. And when you do so, it's going to bring up a list of the non-catalog types that have been created for your library. These are library specific. So you'll click that barcode button and then select an item from this list. Once you do so, that barcode field is going to gray out because you don't want to scan anything, and you will click submit. It's going to ask you to enter the number of non-catalog types that were used or circulated and then click OK. So for example, patron comes in every day and reads a few of your magazine or your newspapers. So you want to keep track of that. So you might enter 3 for the number of newspapers if for that type of tracking and then click OK. It will still appear in this checkout grid, very similar to all of the other checkout types that we covered. All right, let's go through the checkout process. So I am in our migration server. I'm going to bring up our patron and okay, so first we can see I already organized our checkout columns. If I go in here and click reset, just to show you, this is what usually appears when you first open or when you first create a workstation. So this can be very overwhelming because you don't necessarily need to see all of these columns while you're checking out material. So it's a good idea to go through these tabs and organize your columns to match what you may need to look at. So I'm just going to do this real quick. So I personally like to just have 4. I just need to see the due date, title, maybe call number and barcode. If you like to look at your circulation modifier to determine how many items they have out of a certain item, feel free to do that. This is just my preferred way. So we are going to do a normal checkout. Let me copy and paste. So I'm going to submit and it doesn't work. I thought I just fixed this. Well, this will be a good example for a pre-catalog. So I scan the barcode and it does not bring up an item. It brings up this pre-cat thing. So we canceled and rescanned. It still comes up. So let's go ahead and do the pre-cat. Um, so I am going to enter the title of the item, the author. I don't have, or I'm not going to put in the ISBN. I'm going to select circulation modifier. Now remember, it selects the default option. So if I selected book, it would allow two renewals. Um, it would check out for 3 weeks. So we could do that, but I want to show you what the ILL looks like. So I'm going to select that, pre-cat checkout. So now we have the pre-cat that is checked out. It has a 3 week due date. Um, and then, but if we bring up that remaining renewals, it's going to have 0 because that circ modifier does not um, allow renewals. All right. So let's see if this one works. Oh, I'm going to have to. Actually, first, let's do the specific due date. So I'm going to change the specific due date. Let's say I think this is a book. Let's say they want it for 5 weeks instead. And it's your book, so you have more flexibility in, determining how long you want the patron to have it before renewal. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Let's say 7 weeks. So I'm going to select April 23rd. I do this before I scan the item, submit, and there we go. Thank goodness it was in there. So now we have that due date. Otherwise, it would have defaulted to that 3 weeks, which we can see here would have been March 26th. So last type, let's look at those non-cataloged items. This patron, as they were looking at materials, that we noticed that they picked up a couple magazines and maybe some of those like non-catalog magazines. You can, and you want to count them. So we can click on this barcode field, select magazine. We're going to click submit, and let's say they looked at 2 of them. Enter 2, okay. And now it is in here in the items out area. So every time we check out an item, regardless of type, it's going to be checked out to the patron. If you noticed as I scanned those items on Kayla's account, the number next to the items out tab increased. Let's see here. So technically we are done, but we want to initiate a checkout receipt, whether printed or emailed directly to the patron. To close out the checkout session, we do have a few options. Clicking done or one of the drop-down options will trigger a receipt and close the account, which means it will return you to the checkout screen where you can scan the next patron's barcode. Quick receipt or one of the drop-down options will trigger a receipt but keep the account open. So let's say they're done checking out. They say, "Oh, I would like to place a hold on something." So we can do the quick receipt and then go into their holds to start that process. So let's go back into Kayla's account and complete this checkout session. Now we do see that there are only 2 items out here and there are 3 scans. I will cover why that is soon, so it's not super confusing. But we are in here, so let's close out the circulation. I am going to click done. At this point, a receipt may have printed to your designated receipt printer. If the patron has it set in their account that they prefer an emailed checkout receipt, then that will happen instead of a receipt being printed. A message will also appear in the bottom right corner of your screen saying that email has been sent, but now you are ready to perform the next checkout. All right, circulation maintenance. So material out on a patron's account is separated into 3 tabs. We're going to look at 2 of them for now. Items checked out, which is the first internal tab and where the number here on items out is taken from. This is going to show cataloged and pre-cataloged material that are checked out on the patron's account. Non-catalog circulations are where those non-catalog checkouts appear, and are kept separate from the normal circulations because they do not need to be checked in. They are going to automatically fall off the patron's account once that due date has occurred. So if we go back into Kayla's account, see if the F8 works, and go into items out, we can see here there are two items out, the pre-cat and the print item. And then we can go to non-cataloged and we have those two magazines that we counted. So there are a number of of actions we can perform within the items out tab. Probably one of the more popular ones is the patron returns things or renews, maybe checks out some more things, but asks for an updated item receipt of the items they have out. So when you can select the items from the items out tab and then right click or go to actions and then select print item receipt. You can provide them an updated receipt if they want it. Edit due date does what it says. The thing to remember though about editing the due date is that it does not count as a separate circulation, like renewing the item or checking it in and then back out. All it is going to do is change the due date. Like a number of the functions we are or have been talking about today, use with common sense and discretion, especially if it is not your library's item. To enter the due date, you would just select one or more of those items in the list, right click or go to Actions, Edit Due Date, and then choose a new date. Let's say a patron comes in and tells you one of your items has been eaten by their dog. We can mark them damaged directly in the patron's account. Note that you are only able to mark items owned by your library as damaged. If you are not the owning library, you will need to contact them, or the patron will need to, so they can assess the damage and how much, if at all, they want to charge the patron. If it is your item and you're following your library's procedures for billing damaged items, clicking Submit should open a fees box. From here, it will automatically enter the cost of the item that was entered upon creation and the amount you charge for processing, which is set by default at a max of $10. You can enter a note, which I recommend, probably something to do with the extent of the damage or circumstance it was returned. You can also click no charge, which will change the fee to 0 and not charge the patron account. So clicking submit will either charge the fee to the patron account or not, and then check the item in and change its status to damaged. Mark lost by patron. Okay, we have a patron come in and tell us they have lost our item. To mark an item lost, we will access that items out tab. We can right click that item and click mark lost by patron. There will be no confirmation. The item will immediately be moved from the items checkout tab to the other special circulations tab, and its status will be set to lost. Any associated bills will be charged on the account at that time as well. The other special circulations tab, which is that third tab in the items out function, it's going to show lost items until that item is checked in and or associated fines or fees are taken care of. So until those bills have been forgiven or paid, or the item has been checked in, that item is going to stay in that other special circulations tab. Marking an item as claims returned, like the last couple of actions, should only be performed by the item's owning library. When you select that action, you are going to enter the claims return date for that item. So when do they say they returned it? It might be before the due date, it might be after the due date, and that date you put in will automatically adjust any fines or fees that may have been already associated with maybe an overdue item. You can either enter the data manually or click that calendar button. Also, item marked claim return will move into the other special circulations. Mark claims never checked out. Similar to the others, you need to mark your own items, and this, of course, should be used if your library chooses to, used on items that the patron claims they never checked out. If they do, then and that item is marked as never checked out, it's going to remove the item from the patron account and mark it as missing. Renew or renew all. Now, if your library has auto renewals enabled, then this isn't needed really for you guys because those renewals are managed automatically. But if you are not an auto renew library, renew will renew just the item or items that you have selected. Renew all items will try to renew all of the items they have checked out. And then renew with specific due dates. Um, I have, I can't say I don't recommend it because I have never not recommended it, but with always with specific due dates, use caution when you're dealing with other libraries' material. Show last few circulations. This can be really useful if you want to see a quick access to that circ history list, which should show the last 5 circulations for that particular item. It's just a quick way to get into item status into that detail view. And then show triggered events. This might not be something you come across often, but it's kind of interesting to know about. So the triggered event log, this is for item specific. This is going to show you when an action trigger has occurred for an item. So in these examples, you can see for this particular item, that there was a 3-day courtesy text sent. The email was sent successfully based on the event state, that an auto renewal was attempted and completed, and then other courtesy. So if someone says, oh, I didn't receive this email, you might be able to use this log to say, well, our system did send it. So now would be the time to like double check the email address and maybe have them check their junk folder. And there's one for this for holds as well, for like notifications and such. All right, so let's go back into Kayla's account. And we are in items out. And I'm just going to, let's organize these a little bit. So sort visible columns to the top. The items are still checked out, so there's no reason the fines would have stopped. Hasn't checked in. We're gonna just do those. Close. So now we can easily see the number of renewals remaining for an item. I'm going to save my columns. So let's go ahead. Let's mark something damaged. So let's say the Hotel Nantucket, they say that their dog ate part of the book. So we select it from the list. I'm going to right click and then mark damaged. So I'm going to click submit. And now it is asking about the billing. So by default, our item, or when we catalog the item, it was set at $36. So you can choose to enter that or make it less, just depending on your policy. I'm just going to leave it at 36 for now, and put in a note information. For making sure charge fees is selected, and then I'm going to click submit. So that item has now been removed from items out. May need to refresh. There we go. So it is not in the other special circulations, but it did bill that patron for the damaged item. And so then they can pay for it that way or however your library handles that. Checking in. So there are a couple ways we can access the check-in function. We can access it on the splash page, the home page, or we can go into the circulation top navigation menu and click check in. Check-in can be pretty straightforward. Patron returns an item to the desk, you scan or enter the barcode, and its status changes to reshelving or tells us if it needs to go to the hold shelf or transit to another library. There are functions, however, that make the job a little easier and a procedure or two that should be followed. We use what is called backdating during check-in for items returned prior to opening on the current business day. So let's say you get to work in the morning and open your Dropbox. You pull the items out and take them to your circulation desk. We're going to use the calendar next to the effective date, and select the previous day or the last day you were open. So maybe Saturday if it's Monday, because you're closed on Sundays, or it's been a holiday, something. So when you've selected the date, there will be a notification on the screen telling you that you are not checking in material at the current time or date. This will stay until you either check mark the use effective date until log out option, or leave the screen via refresh, or just going to a different part of Evergreen. So this will affect any and items associated overdue bills if there are any. Within the check-in function of Evergreen, we have the ability to use modifiers to change or add an action upon scanning an item. These are actions that will stay active until they are unchecked. Even if you leave the check-in screen, these modifiers will remain on. And these are saved at the workstation level, not user. So if you turn one on, it's based on workstation. So if you log into a different workstation at another computer, you will probably have to re-enable um, the check-in modifiers at this station too. The most commonly used modifiers will be the auto print hold and transit slips. This will automatically print a hold shelf slip or transit slip to your designated printer upon checking in an item. It does bypass a printer prompt if you have Hatch enabled. Also, what might be helpful is the update inventory. What this does, very briefly, um, is when you check in an item and you have that update inventory check-in modifier enabled, it's going to add that date of scanning onto the item. So if you are performing inventory for your collection, you can run a report at like the date that you have stopped inventory, or maybe have it on all year. Um, and then run a report of items maybe that don't have an inventory date, and to see what items may not have been that might have been missed or maybe are missing from your shelf. I did recently find some really good inventory documentation from another Evergreen consortium. It's not It hasn't been updated to reflect Evergreen, Indiana, but it's extremely helpful, and I'm hoping to provide it to everyone soon once I have updated a little more. Mostly the reports area needs to be updated on the shared reports, what you can use. So when an item has been marked lost or missing and it's been found or returned, an alert will appear upon checking the item in. When you click OK Continue, it will either go into reshelving status or transit back to its owning library. So it's okay if it's not your library, you check it in and it was marked lost. You still want to click OK Continue and let it print that transit receipt so it can go back home. After you check in a lost or late item, any associated fines or fees with that specific circulation um, or transaction will appear below your input box. This will also occur when an item is returned late and the library that circulated the item charges overdue fees. You will see a fine tally and transaction bill below the input box. There are a number of available actions that can happen to items that have been checked in. You can add the selected items to a bucket. You can retrieve the last patron who circulated the item. If you forgot to backdate the check-in, you can do so after the fact. Mark items as damaged, to be discarded, or might have missing pieces. I will admit I'm not quite sure how this missing pieces function works. So if you do, please let me know. Record holds will take you to the Bibliographic Records View Holds tab, so you can see any hold placed on that record. Last few circs will open up Detail View in Item Status. When you're checking in material and this alert appears, more often than not, or actually I might want to say 100% of the time, the item in hand was pre-cataloged at checkout. It'll tell you to route the item to cataloging so it can be permanently added to the collection if it's your item or be deleted from the database. So let's check in those items from Kayla's account. I'm going to do a little duplicating so I can copy and paste these. So I want to show you what this update inventory does. So I am going to go into items out. We already marked that item, or scan this, check in. So it's telling me that it needs to go to the consortium, which is where probably because, okay. Um, Normally pre-cats shouldn't bring up a transit slip, so I did something weird here. So, but I'm going to click do not print, but it is checked in. And then that one item that we marked as damaged, I am going to find that barcode. Let's see if it'll let me. I need to make these a little bigger so I can see the barcode. So check this in. It's going to tell me that it had been marked damaged. Okay, continue. And now it needs to be routed to the consortium collection because there was a check-in alert on this item. That's a whole other webinar. But it is checked in and it is telling us to route it to the consortium collection shelving location. So if a staff person needs to replace the item barcode at any point, usually, when you're checking out items, you try to scan the barcode, it doesn't work, or maybe the item itself might be missing something. You have the ability to replace the barcode, not necessarily on the spot within the patron's account, but you can replace it at the Circ desk. Within the circulation top navigation menu, you will select replace barcode. You're going to enter the original barcode for the item, the new barcode, and then submit. Make sure you are scanning or entering the barcodes correctly. To renew items, you can do so, of course, within the patron's account, but we also have the ability to attempt an item renewal separately using the renew item screen from the top navigation circulation menu. After clicking on this button, we are taken to a screen that looks almost exactly like the check-in screen, except we do not have access to check-in modifiers, and there is no backdate option. We can select a specific due date before scanning, and then when you scan the item, it will either renew automatically if there are any remaining renewals, or bring up a message that says the renewal is not allowed because there is a hold request, or maybe the patron is out of renewals. This is where that inventory date comes into play. This is where, let me just bring up this. So we have that update inventory option. I'm going to right click and isn't there an, so I'm going to copy paste this into item sets because I don't want to bring up patron information. So detail view. That is not the barcode that I wanted. But anyway, nope, that just didn't work. We're going to have to use the picture. So when you use that update inventory check-in modifier, or there's other ways to do it, like through item status, there is a couple fields in the quick summary view of item status where it keeps that last inventory date and then where it was scanned. This is really useful. When you run the report, you can determine when the inventory date should have occurred or if there's just no inventory date listed. Some libraries request that when a patron pulls an item off of the shelf, whether to look at it or read it while at the library, that they place it on a cart instead of back on the shelf because they want to count that item's use, or they want to keep track of how much non-catalog material like newspapers or trades rack are used as well. While we could do that within the patron's account, we can also do it here in the in-house use function. So in the top navigation menu, we'll click record in-house use. If we want to count in-house use of catalog material, we want to select the number of uses either by clicking on the arrows or by entering a number directly in the field. And then we want to scan or enter the barcode of the item. When you do that, it's going to appear in its own little grid and track those number of uses. And there's a separate report that can be run to get this list for your statistics. For non-cataloged items, very similar to the checkout screen in the patron account, we will click that barcode button and then select the non-catalog type we are wanting to track. Once we select that, we can put in the number of uses and then submit. All right, so I'm going to go into record in-house use. I apologize, I never zoomed in on this. So here, let's say we have a trades rack. Patron came in and they took 4 books off of our trades rack to read. So I'm going to select paperback and enter 4 for the list and submit. So now we have 4 uses for our paperbacks that we can track. And finally, I wanted to go over some circulation alerts that might appear while you are trying to check out material to your patron. Copy circ not allowed. This happens when you are trying to check out an item to a patron that has a limited access profile type, and the item itself has an R-rated circ modifier. Um, or the item has been marked as do not circulate either within its attributes or within the shelving location. Some Circ staff, like I believe Circ ones and maybe Circ twos, will be able to override it. So they would check mark this and force the action. Um, you can also skip or cancel, which will not check out the item, and you can move on to the next item in the pile. Item not available. So if the item had been previously marked as missing or lost, this alert will appear. It'll either say item was marked missing or item was marked lost. Um, After you've checked the quality of the item, make sure it's not falling apart, what have you, you can click OK Continue to check the item out to the patron, or click Cancel to cancel that checkout for that item, so you can set it aside if it's not in good condition. Another item in transit. This can happen sometimes if an item was not checked in properly upon return. Um, so maybe there was an open transit on the item, and so you can click cancel transit, then check out. So it will abort that transit and then check out the item to the patron, or again, cancel. Patron exceeds checkout count. So this means that the patron, or at least it says the patron in question, has the maximum number of items already checked out. So maybe they try to check out that 11th video disc, or maybe they have 100 books out and they want to check out just one more. You can choose to force the action locally, or skip the item again, or cancel. And you might need Circ 1 permissions in order to do this. Again, I can't 100% say whether or not Circ 2s are allowed to do this. I'm probably going to say no. Open circulation. This can happen if you accidentally scan the item twice during checkout. It can also occur while it is still checked out to another patron, and maybe it was returned, maybe it missed the check-in screen and was shelved. So if you accidentally scan it twice, it's going to give us there is an open circulation on the requested item, and it's telling us it was already checked out to this user on such and such a date. So you can either choose to renew it, or cancel. If it was still checked out to another patron, it would instead say force check-in, then check out. Due date doesn't match with Circ mod. So there's a setting in Evergreen that the due date of an item will automatically modify if the patron account expiration date is less than the item's set attribute. So this patron checked out an audiobook for 3 weeks. However, their expiration date is less than 3 weeks away. So that due date is going to automatically adjust. So that is something to keep in mind if someone comes and says, well, this wasn't 3 weeks, or you look at it and say, okay, this was in 3 weeks. Why is that? This could be why. Grayed out checkout box. This more often than not is the patron account was retrieved with an inactive library card. I think this has mostly been fixed where that stop or the alerts page comes up more often or correctly now. So you should be able to see this more than just the barcode and be like, why can't I click on this?